Oh, you're here. Good. I was hoping for company. You see, I've got stories, dark ones, chilling ones, the kind that keep you up at night. Mythical creatures, curses, horrors you can't escape. Shall we begin? Don't worry, I won't bite. Much.
The clock struck midnight, and the only light in the silent bedroom came from a small lamp on Lina's vanity. In the mirror, her flawless face looked almost unreal in the glow. Alan stood at the door, watching her through the crack. A strange unease gnawed at him. Her perfection felt too deliberate, too unnatural. Lina's vanity was like a carefully arranged altar, filled with jars and bottles that seemed to radiate a mysterious energy. Every day, she spent hours meticulously applying her makeup, her technique so skilled it left Alan in awe. She never hired a makeup artist, not even for special events. She even wore her makeup to bed. Her face was always flawless, as though the makeup had become part of her very being. When Alan once asked, "Why don't you take it off at night?" Lina had simply smiled and said, "This face needs to look its best at all times, Alan." Whenever he tried to pry further, she would reply, "Some secrets are better left alone." Why not take it easy? You'd feel more comfortable without makeup, wouldn't you? Alan had asked her several times. Each time, Lina's response was always the same. "It looks better this way, Alan. Don't you think so?" Her tone was casual, matter-of-fact, and hard to argue with. But over time, Alan started to notice odd signs. One night, he woke up to find Lina standing motionless in front of the mirror, touching up her makeup. Her hands moved fluidly, but her actions seemed too precise, almost mechanical, as if she were following some unseen command. And then there was her reflection. Her eyes seemed hollow, and in the dim light, her pupils glowed faintly. Alan noticed faint marks on the mirror that appeared whenever she reapplied her makeup. They almost formed symbols, faint lines that connected and rearranged themselves into a larger, more sinister pattern. These traces felt like silent warnings, making Alan shiver as he wondered, was her obsession with beauty the whole story? His unease grew until one night Lina announced that she needed to adjust her makeup. She went into the bathroom and didn't come out for what felt like an eternity. When Alan knocked on the door, he heard strange sounds, like leather tearing or something soft being peeled off. Beneath that, there was a wet, sticky noise, as if a viscous substance was dripping and pooling. Alan froze at the door, his scalp prickling. Even when Lina finally spoke, her voice calm and familiar, "I'll be done soon." He couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. The next morning, Lina's face looked even more radiant than usual. Over breakfast, Alan tried to act normal, but the echoes of those sounds and smells lingered in his mind. He wanted to believe it was all just a misunderstanding, a product of his overactive imagination. But that night, everything changed. Lina went back into her makeup room, and this time she left the door slightly ajar. Alan held his breath and crept closer. Through the crack, he saw her standing before the mirror, holding a thin, translucent sheet. She gently placed it over her face, then took out a delicate tool to adjust its edges, almost like a surgeon perfecting a delicate graft. Alan froze. His mind raced with wild explanations, but every scenario felt more terrifying than the last. Lina's beauty, he realized, might not come from any conventional makeup technique. She wasn't just masking flaws. She was hiding something beneath that perfect surface. When Lina turned around, Alan quickly slipped back into the shadows of the hallway. She didn't seem to notice him as she walked back to the bedroom, her usual serene smile firmly in place. But Alan couldn't stop staring at her face. The woman he thought he knew, his wife, might not even be human. In the following days, Alan began quietly investigating. He found a thin notebook tucked away in Lina's vanity. It was filled with symbols and strange writing he couldn't decipher. The pages emitted a faint, strange odor, like decaying herbs. Alan tried searching online for any clues about the symbols, but came up empty-handed. Meanwhile, Lina continued her nightly rituals, always emerging from her makeup room looking impeccable. She smiled at him as though nothing had changed, as though everything was normal. One day, while Lina was out, Alan opened a locked drawer in her vanity. He had found the spare key weeks ago, and curiosity finally got the better of him. Inside, he discovered a faded photograph. The woman in the photo had Lina's exact face, but she stood against a barren, unfamiliar landscape. Alan turned the photo over. On the back, there were more indecipherable symbols and a single line of text that made his stomach turn. "She never changes." Alan stared at the photograph, a heavy weight settling on his chest. Who? No, what? Was Lina? Every detail of their life together suddenly felt sinister, every routine steeped in hidden menace. He began to see warning signs everywhere, as if his entire life with her had been constructed to keep him blind to the truth. On what Alan knew would be their last night together, he waited in the hallway. He had to know. Whatever she was hiding, he couldn't live another day without answers. Just past midnight, Lina entered her makeup room. She carried her familiar makeup box, her smile as serene as ever. Alan waited until she began her routine. Then he approached the door, now slightly open. He peeked through the gap and watched as she lifted a translucent sheet and carefully applied it over her face. She used precise tools to smooth it down, as if performing a surgical procedure. The thin material molded to her skin, its edges perfectly aligned. Alan's heart raced. His elbow bumped the door. The faint sound made Lina pause. She turned slowly, her face still halfway concealed by the translucent sheet. Alan's breath caught. Her eyes, no longer human, were now slitted and gleaming green like a predator's. A row of sharp teeth glinted in the dim light as her mouth curved into a predatory smile. "Alan," she said softly, her voice lower and harsher than ever before, "you shouldn't have been so curious." Alan stumbled back, his throat too tight to scream. As Lina took a step toward him, he realized with chilling clarity that she was not the woman he had married. She never had been.